Lake George Battlefield Moments, a production of Lake George Battlefield Park Alliance, preserving our area's incredible history. Here's the president of Lake George Battlefield Park Alliance, John Denuzzo.
Welcome to Lake George Battlefield Moments. Our guests today are Kevin Richard Morrow and David Manthe of the Schenectady County Historical Society, who operate a fascinating reenacting group that is going to be a big participant in the programs we're doing to commemorate Henry Knox on December the 12th here at Lake George. David, you first. You're contributing significantly to the Knox commemoration events at Lake George on December the 12th by rowing our Knox reenactor on the lake in a replica Bateau. Do many reenacting groups have the capability of staging events on both land and water?
There aren't that many. There's a few people, like there's a fellow down in New Jersey who has a replica Bateau. There was a group up in Plattsburgh that had one, but I don't think they're operating anymore. It takes a fair amount of work to keep a boat going. These are replica wooden boats, and if we try to maintain them in a historic manner, it takes a lot of work. And so not that many people do that. We maintain enthusiasm by having our a community rowing program to keep that going, and that has enough volunteers that we can able to maintain the boats and actually keep doing things with them.
Well, I'm a fair weather boater myself. December, I don't believe I've ever, even in my youth, was out on the lake or any lake in the midst of December. I mean, how do you limit the risk of accidents in using Bateau, particularly in a harsh time of year?
Well, we have a lot of experience, and we do keep modern safety gear hidden away in case we need it. A lot of it's just being prudent and knowing what you're doing. And so as someone who's done thousands and thousands of miles in open boats, both this boat and modern canoes and things like that, part of it is reading the weather, seeing what you've got, being aware of your surroundings. So if you go out, one of the nice things about December is we don't have that many power boats running around Lake George, so we're not going to have those 3-foot wakes that come from lots of power boats getting together. On the other hand, you have really harsh conditions. So, we're wearing wool, and that's clothing that'll keep us warm. And if we fall in the water, we have man overboard drills we've done and have practiced getting people back out of the water as quickly as we can. And these are incredibly stable boats. They're designed for cargo. So, it'd be really tough to upset one of them. And so we know that capability. But again, we've practiced this when fair weather to try to make sure that we know what to do in the case we ever actually had a real problem.
Got it. So rowing a modern kayak or canoe, what's the difference in doing an 18th century replica Bateau?
So a canoe is tiny and narrow. I've got a sleek racing canoe that I use sometimes. It's like 29 inches wide. And with that, I can go super fast, but I can't carry that much. And this is a cargo boat. It's first and foremost, it's the UPS truck of the 18th century. We can carry 2 tons of stuff with it. Load up of quite a number of people in it. So it's really stable. It's also comparatively slow. There's like modern terms like prismatic coefficient, where basically it's how brick-like versus fine your boat is. And this is on the brick end of things. And so as a consequence, it's not a high performance vehicle, but it's very reliable and very steady. And so part of it is also knowing rowing technique. We row with fixed seats and very long oars, 11-foot oars, and that gets us going. But it also, it's not, I can't turn as quickly as a canoe, but I can be very maneuverable if my rowers are working well with each other.
And how many row on a Bateau, or in your group anyway?
We actually have 2 of these boats. We're going to be using the slightly larger one for this event. We have 4 rowing stations and 1 steersman. And so we have 4 people rowing, 1 person steering. We could alternately have people rowing on each side instead of 1 person each oar. And it's really just like historically when they were moving cargo, they often just had a crew of 3 because manpower costs money basically. And but we'd rather have the more rowers and more experience on board.
Good. Makes sense. I'm going to ask you both this question. You first, David. Personally, how did you get involved in reenacting, and what makes it special for you?
I actually first stumbled across reenacting at Fort Ticonderoga. I noticed, I stopped there one day, literally coming back from hiking, and noticed people were reenacting. And I'd always sort of picked up an interest in history because I started out as a mechanical engineer. And I recall looking at an old compass and wondering what some of the markings on it meant. And I said, I don't know. And so I basically did some research in the library, and between that and running into reenactors, I said, oh, this looks interesting. And local history is something that has fascinated me. I mean, living in New York, you're surrounded by it. And so it's also a hobby where you can do lots of stuff. So like there's some hobbies you do the same thing over and over again. We like this because I get to do something different every year, every time. I've never rode Knox anywhere before. I get to do that. That's just what keeps this hobby interesting to me is the variety of what we can do.
Okay, now on to you, Kevin. The question I just asked David, how did you get involved in reenacting, and what makes it a hobby that you embrace the way you do?
My wife and I went to public reenactments at the Old Stone Fort and various other sites, and we were watching these other people doing it and thought, oh, well, that'll be easy. We can do that. Won't that be a fun way to spend our spare time? Little did we know that, of course, eliminates all your spare time when you start doing something like this. And we made quite a commitment to it. And I think we've grown beyond reenacting. There's an interesting that the term reenactor has been kind of looked down upon lately. And the term living historian or experimental archaeologist is usually the preferred term because we're doing so much more than just recreating a battle. We're interested in all the aspects of life in the 18th century.
Oh, thank you. I'll remember that phrase. That is, it rolls off the tongue a little better anyway. So how long have you been doing that now?
Oh my God, it's been 30 years. Huh. I'm looking at the retirement plan, but there doesn't seem to be one.
That's what happens with obsessions.
Career, yeah.
Now, I know you're broadly affiliated, your group is broadly affiliated with the Schenectady County Historical Society, but I know it's a subset of living historians. So tell me about the group. How many members, what kind of events, and how many events do you do each year?
We have about 24 men-at-arms and probably a dozen non-combatants. Some of that overlaps a bit because I do non-combatant things as well. As I age, I'm doing more and more role play. But I'd say we try during this summer, spring months to fall. We're doing probably 2 events or so a month from May to end of October into November. Now, here with the 250th, there are events happening, very exciting events happening around the clock, around the calendar. And we've been doing events with that at various times. So I would say probably 2 times a month, but that's not everybody's involved with every event. You know, we produce about a dozen or so people at an event.
And what do you call your group of living historians? I know there's something other than the Schenectady County Historical Society.
We do the Second Albany County Militia. We also do a French and Indian War group was very involved in the 250th. And that's Schuyler's Provincials of 1759. And then there's a group called Kellogg's Artillery, which does 1812 events. And there's different accoutrements and different clothing for each of those categories.
And by and large, where is your group based, in the Schenectady Albany area, or do you have members from
Well, the Second Albany historically was based in Schenectady area, but we have folks I'm from Albany. We have folks in the Schoharie Valley. We have folks along the Mohawk, in Schenectady. So we're kind of spread out a little bit, but I would say we base our impression mostly on Schenectady area people of the period.
So I'm sure there will be people listening to this who might want to find out more, maybe join, but maybe just kind of, follow you around, see what you do. How can they get more information about your group and the living history that you represent?
Well, it would be excellent to come to an event. The next event that the Second Albany is really involved with will be in December 14th. That's at Schuyler Mansion. There'll be folks there from our unit and several others as well, being civilians at the Schuyler Mansion with Knox.
And is there a website or anything where more information could be seen?
There is a website. Look up Second Albany County Militia, or look up Kellogg's company or look up Schuyler's company. And both of those will lead you to our websites.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Kevin, for being with us. You opened the window for us a bit to learn more about living historians and what they do. Thank you also, David, for your answers on kind of the practicalities of how you work the lake on your bateau. It's very interesting stuff. Now, you can see these men and their crewmates in action on Friday, December the 12th, in a reenactment of Henry Knox's landing in a replica bateau at Dog Beach in Lake George, and then being pulled by draft horse to the entrance of Fort George, where Knox actually stayed for over 2 weeks in 1775. That's free, begins at 3 o'clock that afternoon. The other commemorative events that day include a reception with historian Rick Atkinson at the Holiday Inn, Lake George, later that afternoon, which is sold out. There's a free public kind of conversation with Rick Atkinson that night at 7 o'clock. Rick will field questions and sign books, which will be for sale there. So a lot of great American history still happening at Lake George. Our website's lakegeorgebattlefield.org. We thank you for being a part of our history.
Lake George Battlefield Moments, a production of Lake George Battlefield Park Alliance, preserving our area's incredible history. For more information or to check out the latest podcast, go to lakegeorgebattlefield.org and listen live on Saturday mornings to Lake George Battlefield Moments on 93.5 Lake FM.